you're missing the window of repetition and strategy that allows you to have been in front of people enough times and with enough frequency for them to make an intelligent decision because they know, like, and trust you.
Welcome to Brand on the Rocks, the podcast that distills bold ideas into clear messages you can actually use. Each week, we serve up conversations, audits, and straight pours of insight to help you cut through the noise and grow your business. Hosted by brand strategist Ryan Holck, this is where clarity comes neat and your brand gets remembered.
During the month of January, I have had the opportunity to do some VIP days, some marketing strategy sessions with businesses. And in that process, I have been thinking about what it is that I walk into each of those events really kind of as a goal and a mindset, and how I'm going to help them get success and plan strategically for the coming year. And I had somebody who knew I had been part of one of these recently send me a DM and said, "Hey, I think I need one of those." And I was breaking down kind of, here's what you could expect, here's what it might look like. And I realized, hey, this is probably something I should be talking about on the podcast, because others are probably in a similar place. They're like, what does that mean? So I want to be strategic, but how would that process even work? So there's a couple things, really three things that I walk into one of those events, like whether it's a half day like I did last week or a 2-day in-person intensive that I did a couple weeks back. There's three big buckets that I want to make sure that we as an organization cover during our time together. And really, before we even dive into it, I like to set the stage, because it's interesting that I find that so many business leaders walk into a session like that as if it's a planning event rather than a strategy event. And what I mean is that they walk in with the expectation that we're just going to put a list of to-dos on the wall, and that's what we're going to call strategy in our marketing for the next year. But I like to go a step further, because tasks of marketing don't bring the same response as a plan for marketing that is delivered strategically over the course of time. Yes, both may have tasks associated, but random task versus strategically planned tasks have very different responses from your ideal customer. And so I like to start these sessions with lots and lots of questions, because questions really in the setting are your best friend. They put everyone in the room on the same page, whether it's me curating and kind of walking through the process, or it's, a team of one or two, or even a larger team, like say a board walking through the process. It gets everyone thinking about and explaining their insights to the room. And all of a sudden, everyone's looking at themselves going, oh, there's some things we're really clear on. There's some things we're not clear on. Maybe we need to bring some focus here. And one of the beautiful things about being an outsider who walks into rooms and helps facilitate things like this is that oftentimes I bring a new perspective to the room, because I ask questions that I don't know the answers to, and that people in the room might assume everyone else around the table knows the answer to. And very quickly you go, we are not on the same page on some things. Maybe we've got some clarifying to do. And that opens us to a conversation then about, how do we use our marketing strategically to clarify those kind of things? All that to say, questions are your best friend. They are a great way to get your team aligned on purpose, on mission, on vision, on how are we going to talk about our products and services in a way that is congruent across all of our channels. Whether you try to do that yourself or you bring someone in as outside eyes, I encourage you to start with questions because it will change how this process works. So, my first set of questions always circles around the audience and really confirming who is it that you as a business want to reach? Who do you want to get in front of? And it's interesting because our perspective of who our ideal client is in most businesses, you've gone through a client avatar process of some sort. You've made a list, whether it's bullet lists or sentences, or you filled out some sort of survey of who do I most want to serve. And we kind of get this idea of here's the main things that we want to have our customers be like. That's what they look like. Here's who they are. But I like to take that a second step deeper because within your ideal customers, your ideal client avatar, that audience has subsets. And some of those subsets you may love serving, while others, frankly, you can't stand to serve. And think of it this way. Have you ever gotten a phone call, a text thread, a messenger, a chat from someone who the longer you went back and forth with them, the more you thought, if we never serve this person again, it will be okay? Versus someone who connects with you about your product, your service, and you realize something about this process is different. The way they are responding, the way we are helping them, the way they're using our product. If I had 100 more of these people like this is life-giving, I could do this every day. The interesting thing is those people from the outside may have very similar things on their client avatar. They may be in the same age bracket. They may be, the same station of life, but something at a deeper level is here's who I want to serve. Here's who literally sucks the life out of my business. And so when I think about the audience, I want to think about what are those things I want to repeat and what are those things I want to repel. And in one of my recent sessions, we went so far as to go through client contact lists, and we went by name and said, what aspects of this person are things you'd like to replicate? What about this client experience do you love as a business leader? And would you like to see more of? And we started identifying those specifics. And it was things like the type of character they had, how they showed up in rooms, how they spoke about the products and services, how they interacted with the products and services. It was a much more hands-on kind of approach. It wasn't just descriptive lines about a type of person. It was, I want people who have this kind of approach to solving problems. I want people who have, and we made a list of those type of things. And then we made a list and said, what's the opposite of that? In the people who we would not necessarily go after as a client again, what are the patterns of things that we don't like to have to deal with? And we made a list of those patterns. And so we had this, here's the pluses, and here's the things that we'd like to repel, or, if this is you, it's not for you kind of approach to some of our marketing. And all of a sudden, the conversation got very different because we no longer just had a rough description of the kind of people in our audience, those ideal clients that we wanted to serve. All of a sudden, we had specifics about what about those clients do we want to serve? What about those clients do we not want to serve? And I will admit that just saying that, it can sound like we were making judgments about individuals. And the process was not that. The process was, what about the client experience do we want to replicate? So we didn't see this as a bashing individuals kind of thing. We saw this as a truly, if I had more of this kind of person, I would thrive in my business. If I had more of this type of person, I would die in my business. And that's how we took the approach. And all of a sudden, this audience checklist went from 8, 10 little bullets to 2 giant sticky notes, like the huge 20 by 30s, covered with bullets of here's the type of things we love, here's the kind of things we'd like to repel. And it very quickly changed our thoughts on how we'd speak to this audience because I could read down the list and go, this isn't about individuals. This is about specifics of who our business wants to serve. And it gave us language immediately to think about how would we even talk to them, which leads me into my next part, my next sub point really of this is what does the audience need to hear right now? What story does your ideal audience need to hear? And look, I know that most business leaders, here's the product, here's the product, here's the product, here's the product, here's the product. Hey, did I tell you about the product? I need you to know about the product. The problem is that customers think about how you buy things. You don't buy things when they're smacked over the head like that. You buy things that acknowledge, hey, you probably have a need in this area. We have a great solution in this area. Here's how it makes your life better. You ought to try us out. So notice it's a subtle difference, but it is a difference in that both have us sharing a story, but one is more confrontational, more upfront. The other is I'm going to think about how my customer engages with my marketing. And I'm going to tell a story that identifies that they probably have a problem I can solve and we have a great solution. And if they use our solution, here's what they can expect to get from us. Listen, your product, if you look at your product, your group of products, the group of services you offer, you know which one of those is your highest volume product. Which one of those has the most profit for your business? The interesting thing is that as business leaders, we tend to look at our suite of products and services and want to market and advertise them all the same. But so often, if you look at the bottom line, you'd actually realize 80% of the profit comes from one or two, 12, 15% comes from another item, and like the last 5 items fill in the last 5%. Well, from a resource standpoint, from a focus standpoint, from a time standpoint, a marketing dollars, marketing focus, audience engagement standpoint, if you pour fuel on the proverbial fire of a product that already is 80+% of your market value and your income, you're going to see growth there the most. But most businesses don't think about it. I walk into businesses and I'm like, tell me about your products. And they're like, well, here's the thing we really want to push. I'm like, what percentage of your overall business does that account for? They're like, 3%. Okay, well, where's the other 97? Well, it's in these 3 products. Why are we spending time and focused attention? Let's build what works first and then scale the other things. So sometimes asking the right questions helps us to see that our audience needs to hear about the ways we can help them the best and that conversely help us the best. So let's talk most about our highest grossing products. Let's talk most about the products that are going to serve the most numbers of people in the most incredible way. And that really comes down to then I figure out what is that number 1 or 2 product, number 1 or 2 service, and I look at that audience and think, how would they need to hear about this product to help encourage them to realize we are the best provider of this solution for them. And that means you've got to look at it and go, all right, so if we've got, let's just say the typical, business has 5 or 6 products and you've got the top 1 or 2. Well, let's talk about those 1 or 2 80% of the time. And let's figure out, okay, what do they need to hear? What core message do we need to talk about and the core offer for each of those top products? And let's begin to strategically think, okay, if I spend 80% of my time talking about those, I'm going to split the next 20% over the last 3, 4 big products and begin to break out, okay, how would I strategically think about that if I've got 6 products and I've got 12 months out of the year and I've got 2 of them that do 80% of the work? Let's begin to do the next step, which is think strategically. Where do we share the story so the right people hear it? How are we going to get it strategically into their hands? And so I actually sit with a calendar, and I did this last week with someone. We shared a Google Calendar and we just started dropping target dates into the calendar. We said, okay, what are the big buckets? What are the big rocks that you want to do this next year? And we started putting things, okay, you want 3 of those promo moments driven to a 1-day event next year. So let's split them into quarters. Let's put them on the calendar. Okay, you want 2 of this type of opportunity, this type of promotional thing throughout the year. Let's do a quarter 2 and a quarter 4. And we built out a rough idea of the year and then looked at it and went, okay, that's where all the dates are. Now, if we have promo run up, we have marketing push into each of those items. Where is their overlap? Oh, okay, there's something, a 2-week break, and then the next piece, something, a 2-week break, and all of a sudden we could see really quickly that we had pacing to our year. Now, did we have all the messaging words, like what's going to go in every email written out in that very first meeting? No, we didn't. We did, though, however, have a structure that said in the next 4 weeks, we need to work towards promoting X. Okay, that meets the needs of this group of people. That group of people uses text, email, and one of our 3 social channels. So that's where we're going to focus for that. The next item, those people only use social and conversion ads, so paid ads. So we're going to build a campaign just using those 2. And we go through the entire year thinking through, based on this audience, what they need to hear us say and where they're spending time already. We literally lay out an entire year's process. Now, after we've got that, the team still has to go in and write the content, figure out how you're going to talk about it. Someone's got to create your cute little Canva graphics to go with your post. Someone's got to do, a website to take your registrations, those type of things. But what this process has done for the organization is it's given them a way to look strategically across the entire year, or at least half of the year, and say, I always know what's coming. So when your team has a slow day and goes, I'm between projects right now, you look at the calendar and go, the next big thing is, let's get you working on that. I've got a VA who has some free time next week. Let's get them working on the next thing on the calendar. Let's get them thinking about X. My graphic designer is out for 2 weeks, so I need to take that into account. All of a sudden, your entire marketing world begins to change. Not because you're creating more, not because you're creating differently, but because you're creating strategically with your goals in place first, rather than just throwing ideas out as they come. Okay. Some things to think about in this process is you have to know where that audience, those ideal people you're talking to who you want to replicate, where they're already spending time. And you've got to figure out some ways to speak in your messaging about how to repel the people you don't want to keep attracting, who you don't want to be your ideal client anymore. And then you've got to think about how frequently do they really need to hear this message? Someone who's super connected to you, who, let's say if you're a coach consultant and you do a, uh, a 1-day event or a couple day event, quarterly or something. Well, they need probably some repetition. They need some reminders that it's happening. But if they're really connected to you and they're already in your ecosystem, they're going to take a lot fewer touches than someone who has no idea who you are yet. But someone who is similar to those people who are connected to you but doesn't know about you yet is going to take 7, 10, 15 different touch points over the course of time before they know, like, and trust you. And when you've got a strategic calendar like this, it allows you to begin to think about those things at a higher capacity and a higher level so that you're hitting people with enough frequency that they remember, but not so much frequency that it's annoying and you become added noise in their marketing feed. Okay. Um, you've got to remember that we are in a stage where people are making buying decisions later and later. They don't register for events until 1 to 2 weeks before. They sign on for webinars that they decided to attend 10 minutes before the webinar started. They buy at the last possible moment before they actually need the product or service. The thing is, a lot of businesses are adjusting their marketing to chase that. But when you adjust your marketing to chase it, you're missing the window of repetition and strategy that allows you to have been in front of people enough times and with enough frequency for them to make an intelligent decision because they know, like, and trust you. Marketing is your consistent reminder that you have the solution to their problem, whether they are ready for it today or 3 months from now. You have to keep that message in front of them over and over and over again. So those are the 3 things that I run through in a VIP or a marketing strategy day, where whether we have been working together for years or it's a brand new engagement, I come back and we touch on these things at some level. We all get on the same page about who is our audience. We're confirming who we want to reach. Who do you want to get a message in front of? We're talking, what is the story that they need to hear? What does the audience need to hear right now? How are we going to talk about it? And then the strategy of it is, where do we share that story? How are we actually getting it in front of people? What channels are we using? What means are we using to make sure that the right story is told over and over again in the right place so that we are speaking to people who actually need our products and services? So I would encourage you, don't be afraid of questions. Ask great questions of your team. Find someone like me, someone on the outside who will walk in and spend some time with you and say, let's get some new perspective. Let someone ask questions who doesn't know anything about us, because it's going to expose where gaps exist in your business and in your understanding of how people are connecting with your marketing. Because all of a sudden, those questions, you go, something's unclear. We're not on the same page as a team. We need to work on some clarity as a team. That all helps your internal messaging, your external messaging, your paid ads become more clear when you're all on the same page and you know what your delivery schedule is. So I'd encourage you, if you are sitting here at the end of January thinking, oh my goodness, I don't have a plan yet for 2026. Today is the day. This is your chance. This is your time to begin to figure out, confirm who you want to reach. What do they need to hear? Where do we need to share the story and how? Work through that. Figure it out in your business. If you are struggling and you're looking at it and saying, oh my goodness, I don't know how I do this myself, or if you're a team of one, contact me. Send me a DM, like the person today who said, I think I need to be next. I think my whole team needs to be in the room for this next round. Contact me. Let me know. I do these remote. I've done them in group settings, done them in Zoom calls. I've flown across the country to do them to help facilitate these kind of conversations, because they change how your company, how your business thinks about speaking and marketing to the ideal person that you want more of. This has been today's On the Rocks episode of Brand on the Rocks. I thank you for joining me today. As always, thanks for listening. And until next time, keep your ideas bold and your message clear, straight up.